What's up, Skull Nation? Welcome back to another episode that's about to completely change how you look at your beloved Minnesota Vikings. And I'm telling you right now, what I'm about to reveal over the next 25 minutes is gonna blow your mind in ways you never saw coming. We've got 5 absolutely massive stories that are interconnected in the most brilliant way possible. And some of these revelations are going to make you realize just how genius Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell really are at playing the long game. Are you ready to hear about a former Giants quarterback who never threw a single pass for Minnesota but is about to make the Vikings significantly richer? How about a potential safety acquisition that could solve the Harrison Smith replacement question in one devastating move? And wait until you find out about the roster moves that prove this organization thinks about every single detail, even down to practice squad signings that could pay huge dividends. But here's where it gets absolutely wild. And I need you to pay close attention because we're about to dive into quarterback drama that spans multiple teams and could create opportunities for Minnesota that most fans haven't even considered yet. We're talking about moves that show this front office is always thinking 3 steps ahead, always positioning themselves to benefit from other teams' mistakes, always finding ways to turn small investments into major returns. Before I reveal these game-changing stories, I need you to hit that like button right now if you're ready to understand why the Vikings might be the smartest organization in the entire NFL. And drop a comment telling me which of these stories you think will have the biggest impact on the franchise's future. Because trust me, after you hear about the Daniel Jones situation and what it means for Minnesota's draft capital, you're gonna realize that every move this front office makes has layers upon layers of strategic thinking behind it. And when I tell you about the quarterback controversy that's brewing in Indianapolis and how it could create even more opportunities for the Vikings, you're gonna see just how perfectly positioned this organization is to capitalize on chaos around the league. Let's start with a story that proves Kwesi Adofo-Mensah might be the most underrated general manager in football. Picture this moment. It's Tuesday morning, August 19th, 2025, and across the NFL landscape, something extraordinary just happened that's sending shockwaves through every front office in the league. But nowhere are those shockwaves being felt more positively than in the hallways of the Vikings facility in Eagan. The Indianapolis Colts just made one of the most stunning decisions of the entire offseason. And it's about to make Minnesota significantly richer without them having to do absolutely anything except sit back and watch their brilliant strategy unfold exactly as planned. Daniel Jones, the former New York Giants quarterback who never threw a single pass for the Vikings, who spent exactly 1 playoff game on their active roster, just got named the starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts, beating out Anthony Richardson, the 4th overall pick from the 2023 NFL Draft. Let that sink in for a moment. A player who was literally benched and released by the Giants after they gave him a $160 million contract extension. A player who found refuge on the Minnesota Vikings practice squad when nobody else wanted him, just became a starting quarterback again. And that decision is about to trigger a compensatory pick windfall that proves Kwesi Adofo-Mensah is playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. This isn't just about Daniel Jones finding success again. This is about validating the incredible reputation that Kevin O'Connell and this Vikings organization have built around the league as a place where broken players can rebuild their careers and rediscover their potential. When Jones was waived by the Giants in November, he had multiple options, multiple teams that could have offered him a practice squad spot. But he chose Minnesota for one specific reason: the quarterback whisperer himself, Kevin O'Connell, the coach who took Sam Darnold from career backup to legitimate starting quarterback, the coach who has this magical ability to help quarterbacks find their confidence and their fundamentals again. Jones came to Minnesota to learn, to absorb O'Connell's system, to rebuild his mechanics and his mindset, and even though he never saw meaningful playing time with the Vikings, that brief stint in purple and gold was enough to convince the Colts that he was worth $14 million and a starting job. But here's where the genius of the Vikings front office really shows itself, because when they elevated Jones from the practice squad for that playoff game against the Rams, they weren't just giving him an opportunity to contribute, they were triggering the compensatory pick formula that could now net them a 4th round draft pick instead of a 5th round pick, all because Jones is a starter in Indianapolis. We're talking about potentially gaining significant draft capital for an investment of $127,000, turning a throwaway practice squad signing into a premium asset that could become the next Justin Jefferson, the next Adam Thielen, the next game-changing player who transforms this franchise for years to come. Can you imagine being Anthony Richardson right now, sitting on that bench, knowing that a quarterback who was literally unwanted by his previous team just took your starting job? Can you imagine being a Vikings fan and realizing that your organization just turned an act of kindness into substantial draft capital while building their reputation as the best place in the NFL for players to rebuild their careers? Now, let me take you deeper into this story, because what just happened in Indianapolis isn't just about Daniel Jones getting a second chance. It's about revealing fundamental truths about how organizations evaluate talent and how the Minnesota Vikings have positioned themselves to benefit from other teams' confusion and chaos. Picture the scene in the Colts facility when Shane Steichen made this announcement. Picture the stunned faces of coaches and executives who just watched their former 4th overall pick get beaten out by a player who was literally on another team's practice squad 8 months ago. This decision sends shockwaves through the entire NFL landscape because it validates everything we've been saying about player development, about coaching, about organizational culture, and about how the right environment can resurrect careers that seem completely dead. Daniel Jones didn't just randomly become good enough to start for the Colts. He spent those crucial weeks in Minnesota absorbing Kevin O'Connell's teaching, learning the nuances of quarterback play that had been missing from his game, rebuilding the confidence that 6 years in New York had systematically destroyed. The Colts looked at what O'Connell did with Sam Darnold. They saw how he transformed a career backup into a legitimate starting quarterback who led the Vikings to the playoffs. And they believed that same developmental magic had rubbed off on Jones during his brief time in the system. This is organizational reputation at its finest. The kind of credibility that takes years to build but creates opportunities that money simply cannot buy. Think about what this means for future free agents. Think about how many players around the league are going to remember that the Vikings took care of Daniel Jones when nobody else would, helped him rebuild his career, and then watched him land a $14 million starting job with another team. This is how you build a culture that attracts talent. This is how you create an environment where players want to come even when they have other options, even when they could make more money elsewhere. But beyond the cultural implications, let's talk about the pure financial genius of this move. Because according to Adam Schefter and multiple NFL insiders, the Vikings are now projected to receive a 4th-round compensatory pick in the 2026 draft if Jones plays enough snaps to qualify. And with him being named the starter, that threshold is almost certainly going to be met. We're talking about transforming a practice squad signing that cost virtually nothing into a 4th-round draft pick that could be worth millions of dollars in value. And that's not even counting the intangible benefits of proving to the entire league that Minnesota is the place where careers get resurrected. Chris Spearing from Clutch Points perfectly captured the significance of this move, noting how it demonstrates the incredible job that Kevin O'Connell is doing in building something special in Minnesota. Something that goes far beyond just winning games on Sundays. This is about creating sustainable success, about building a reputation that pays dividends for years and years to come. Can you imagine how many agents are going to remember this moment when their clients need a soft landing spot, when they need a place to rebuild their value and rediscover their potential? This is franchise building at its absolute finest, and it's just another example of why this Vikings organization is operating on a completely different level than most teams in the NFL. But wait, there's an even more fascinating layer to this story that most people haven't considered yet, because while everyone's celebrating Daniel Jones getting a second chance and the Vikings getting compensatory draft capital, there's a ripple effect happening that could create even more opportunities for Minnesota. Opportunities that could solve problems they didn't even know they had. Picture this scenario. The Indianapolis Colts just created a quarterback controversy of epic proportions by choosing Daniel Jones over Anthony Richardson. And that controversy could very well lead to Richardson becoming available via trade, which opens up a possibility that should have every Vikings fan paying close attention. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why would Minnesota be interested in Anthony Richardson when they have J.J. McCarthy ready to take over as the starter, when they've invested a 1st-round pick in their quarterback of the future? Here's why. Because while J.J. McCarthy has all the tools to be successful, while Kevin O'Connell has proven he can develop quarterbacks better than almost anyone in the league, the Vikings currently have a massive hole at backup quarterback that could become a serious problem if McCarthy gets injured. Look at what happened last season when McCarthy went down in the preseason. The Vikings were fortunate enough to have Sam Darnold ready to step in and not just manage the offense, but actually elevate it to championship levels. But what happens if McCarthy gets hurt this season? What happens if the Vikings need someone to step in and keep their Super Bowl window open? Right now, they're looking at Sam Howell, Brett Rypien, or Max Brosmer as their backup options. And while those players have potential, none of them offer the ceiling that Anthony Richardson brings to the table. Richardson might be struggling with consistency, he might be having trouble with the mental aspects of the position, but there's no denying that he has more pure physical talent than almost any quarterback in the NFL. He's the kind of player who could thrive under Kevin O'Connell's guidance, the kind of athlete who could benefit enormously from the developmental system that has already worked wonders with other quarterbacks. And here's the kicker. With Richardson losing his starting job to a player who was on the Vikings practice squad just months ago, his trade value has probably never been lower, which means the Vikings could potentially acquire him for a fraction of what the Colts originally invested. We're probably talking about a 4th round pick or similar compensation to bring in a quarterback who was the 4th overall selection just 2 years ago. A player who still has the physical tools to be a franchise quarterback if he can ever put it all together. Cody Williams from Fansided perfectly captured this possibility, noting how Minnesota promoted this type of thinking when they signed Daniel Jones last season, how they're always looking for ways to add talent and depth at crucial positions. The beauty of this potential move is that it gives the Vikings the ultimate insurance policy behind McCarthy, while also giving Richardson the chance to learn from one of the best quarterback developers in the NFL. Can you imagine what Kevin O'Connell could do with Richardson's arm talent and athleticism? Can you picture the packages they could create, the dimensions they could add to their offense with a quarterback who can make throws that very few players in the league are even capable of attempting? This isn't just about depth anymore. This is about potentially adding a player who could become a franchise quarterback in his own right if everything clicks. Now let's shift gears and talk about something that could completely revolutionize the Vikings defense in ways that most fans haven't even begun to consider. Because while everyone's focused on the quarterback situation and the offensive side of the ball, there's a potential move brewing that could solve the Harrison Smith replacement question with one brilliant stroke of genius. Picture this scenario. It's cut down day around the NFL. Rosters are being trimmed from 90 players to 53. And suddenly a player becomes available who could be the perfect fit for Brian Flores' aggressive, multiple front defensive system. A player who has exactly the skill set needed to maximize the chaos and confusion that Flores loves to create. Kyle Duggar, the New England Patriots safety who signed a 4-year, $58 million extension just 16 months ago, is apparently falling out of favor with his current team under new head coach Mike Vrabel, and that creates an incredible opportunity for a Vikings organization that knows exactly how to identify and maximize undervalued talent. Think about how insane this situation is. We're talking about a player who was considered valuable enough to receive nearly $60 million in guaranteed money. A player who has proven he can play at an elite level in the NFL, and now he's working with the scout team defense during joint practices because he doesn't fit the new coaching staff's vision. When Patriots general manager Elliott Wolf gives quotes about finding the right combination and earning a role, about the safety position being based on communication, that's not exactly a ringing endorsement for a player making Duggar's kind of money. This is a classic case of a coaching change leading to philosophical differences, and those differences create opportunities for teams like Minnesota who understand how to use players and systems that maximize their strengths. Brian Flores would absolutely love what Kyle Duggar brings to the table, because this is exactly the type of safety who thrives in his system. A player who can line up in the box and deliver punishing hits against the run, while also having the range and athleticism to cover ground in the secondary and create confusion for opposing quarterbacks. He's similar to Josh Metellus in terms of versatility and skill set, and we all know how much Flores has gotten out of Metellus in this defensive scheme. The financial aspects of this potential move are fascinating too, because while cutting Duggar would only save the Patriots about $1 million in cap space while leaving them with $9 million in dead money, trading him would save them over $10 million while giving them the same dead money hit. That's where the Vikings' $25 million in cap space becomes incredibly valuable, because they have the financial flexibility to absorb Duggar's contract, especially if they can negotiate with the Patriots to eat some of the salary to make the deal more palatable. We're probably looking at a day 3 draft pick to acquire Duggar, which might seem steep given all the compensatory selections the Vikings have come in their way, but think about the immediate impact versus waiting for a rookie to develop and contribute. This is a player who could step in from day one and make this defense significantly better. A player who could help ease the transition from Harrison Smith to the next generation of Viking safeties. The injury guarantees don't kick in until March of 2026. So if the fit doesn't work out, the Vikings aren't stuck with long-term financial obligations. They can move on without penalty if necessary. Can you imagine what Brian Flores could do with a safety room that includes Duggar, Metellus, and Theo Jackson? Can you picture the packages they could create, the disguises they could run, the absolute havoc they could wreak on opposing passing attacks? This isn't just about replacing Harrison Smith anymore. This is about potentially upgrading the position and giving Flores another elite weapon in his already loaded defensive arsenal. Let's close this out with something that might seem small and insignificant on the surface, but actually reveals everything you need to know about how this Vikings organization operates, how they think about every single detail, how they approach roster construction with a level of thoroughness and attention to detail that separates championship organizations from everyone else. Picture this scene. It's Tuesday, August 19th. And while most of the football world is focused on starting lineup decisions and blockbuster trades, the Vikings are quietly making moves that show they understand that depth matters, that competition matters, that every single roster spot has value, even if it's just for one preseason game. Xavier Valade, Miles Stay, and Zach Bailey, two names that most casual fans have never heard of, just got added to the Vikings roster ahead of their preseason finale against the Titans. And while these signings might seem like throwaway moves just to fill out the 90-man roster, they actually represent something much deeper about this organization's commitment to excellence at every level. Valade brings a fascinating background to Minnesota, a player who racked up over 5,300 yards from scrimmage and 39 touchdowns during his college career at Wyoming and Arizona State, setting career highs with 1,481 yards and 18 touchdowns as a fifth-year senior. This isn't some random practice squad body. This is a player who has proven he can produce at the highest collegiate level, who has bounced around the NFL with brief stints with the Texans, Steelers, Jets, and Saints, always looking for his opportunity to prove he belongs at the professional level. At 27 years old, he's not a developmental prospect anymore. He's a veteran presence who can come in and contribute immediately, even if it's just in a preseason game when Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason are resting on the sidelines. But here's what's really interesting about this signing. The Vikings might have already seen enough from Ty Chandler and Xavier Scott in their competition for the third running back role, and adding Valade gives them another option to evaluate, another potential practice squad candidate who could provide crucial depth throughout the season if injuries occur or if they need someone who can contribute on special teams. Bailey's story is even more compelling because he's actually been part of the Vikings organization before, spending time on their practice squad from December 2020 until October 2021. So there's familiarity there. There's institutional knowledge about what he brings to the table and how he fits into their system. As a 6'6", 315-pound journeyman who can play multiple positions along the offensive line, Bailey gives the Vikings insurance for their preseason finale and potentially beyond if they need depth or if other players get injured during final evaluations. These moves might seem insignificant to casual observers, but they actually reveal the thoroughness of this front office, the attention to detail that separates good organizations from great ones, the understanding that championship teams are built not just with superstars and big-name free agents, but with depth players and practice squad warriors who might never see the field on Sundays, but who make everyone else better during practice. Will Ragaz from Sports Illustrated perfectly captured the purpose of these signings, noting how they're probably just meant to give the Vikings fresh bodies for their final preseason game, but recognizing that the best case scenario has these players contributing on the practice squad after roster cuts, ready to step up whenever the team needs them. This is how sustainable success is built. This is how organizations create the kind of depth and competition that keeps everyone sharp and motivated throughout the entire season. Can you appreciate this level of attention to detail? This commitment to maximizing every single opportunity to get better? This is why the Minnesota Vikings are building something truly special. Something that goes far beyond any individual season or any single group of players. Something that could define this franchise for years and years to come.